Because half the time I'm trying to figure out myself with the console and the PC and everything else here that is quite technical, really. But this time, actually, listen to this one. It's actually from Loving Spoonful. And did you ever have to make up your mind? Now, that's quite a lengthy and mouthful title for a song. Anyway, good morning to you, for those of you joining us on a Nesfan FM 100 Talkback. Second week for the 2026 season, and we're wrapping it up for today. Friday it is, and thank goodness, isn't it? Yeah, we're up to the end of the week now. How have you been, really? And for those of you who've been following us, Ivan from Gordon's, who else is there? Turalom, Ellison from Gordon's as well. Kendall, thank you so much. Ali from Lay, Frank Talk from Gerahu. It's the friends I remember talking with, went off, came back again, and it's been 2 weeks and they're still here with us. Thank you for the loyalty and the support. I'd like to thank our sponsors as well. Today, as we get into our discussions as we break for the weekend, we have come up with mixed reactions, I suppose, in the start of the year. We were talking, of course, election-related matters with political parties yesterday, with the register of political parties and so forth. We've seen day come to a close, so is New Ireland in a way, and there was a slight sort of call there, I suppose, in the declaration yesterday. We'll get that all sorted out. We know some said Sam Coyne, the others, of course, said something else in the later part of the evening. And today, in fact, as we get into our discussions, now this is quite an interesting one. We hear of where we are with the CPI, the Corruption Perception Index. To be quite honest, folks, we are not doing very well. And this is quite concerning, really. Over the years, how many times has this report come out, and how many times have we fared miserably? Well, Transparency International recently released the 2025 Corruption Perception Index, CPI, results that reveal a sharp decline in Papua New Guinea's score. We don't have a very good scorecard on this. TIPNG stated that these results highlight an urgent need for the government to protect the integrity of democratic processes, considering the approaching 2027 national general elections. The very issue we discussed to great length yesterday in preparation for the elections with the register of political parties and candidates. Now, the CPI measures perceived public sector corruption based on expert assessments and business surveys, with 0 being highly corrupt and 100 being very clean. All right, so where are we with that? Papua New Guinea has scored 26 out of 100 on the 2025 CPI, marking a significant 4-point drop from its previous score of 31. To further elaborate on this morning, I'm joined by Mr. Peter Reitze, Chairman of TIPNG, and Ms. Ariane Kasman, CEO of TIPNG. It's nice to have my old friends back on the show. Good morning to the both of you.
Yeah, good morning, Alice. Always a pleasure to be with you.
No, thank you so much for sparing us time again to understand where we are really with this. So, not a very good record. I mean, 26 down now, and for 2025, we still haven't learned, haven't we? Chairman, can I start? What is your view around all of this, really?
Well, Douglas, look, I think the report clearly it shows that we've failed in terms of our efforts to fight corruption. And this is made even more significant when you link it with the recent grey listing of the country as well. So what it tells us is that we are not taking seriously our call for a complete countrywide or society-wide and government-wide effort to combat corruption. That's what it needs, and both the score from the CPI and the grey listing are clearly indicators of our failure.
Yeah. I've got this call coming in very early. Can we take this call?
Yes, sir.
I hope it's got to do anything with our discussion this morning. That's fun. FM 100 Talkback. Okay. It happens. Yeah. So over the years, we've just been between 25, 31, thereabouts. There's just not hasn't been any improvement. I mean, Arian, can I bring you into the conversation? Arian Castman is the CEO for TIPNG.
Look, Douglas, over the last 10 years, what we have seen in the trend is that we do have some slight increases happen. But unfortunately, as we approach or enter into an election year, we do see a significant drop. And this is something that we have observed over the last 10 to 12 years. Looking at the CPI itself. So it's pointing to really the challenges we're facing when it comes to ensuring that we have an election that is free, fair, and safe, and really an election where we are actually making sure promoting integrity during elections is very important in ensuring we can address the CPI score as well.
I note quite considerably that the references around this perception index now been released have been around the electoral cycle. Why is that?
Perhaps if I may, Douglas, we generally see a pattern. So when a new government is formed, there is a mandate there to bring about some change. So generally, what they'll do is they'll get busy in terms of the work of government and try and build forward those reforms and the agenda for change. As it gets closer to elections, there are different motivations. People are preparing for the elections. Perhaps they're looking for ways to perhaps build their own platforms for when they go back to the elections. Now, that may well be through delivering large-scale infrastructure. It may well be in terms of getting certain people into positions of power or influence. And so as a result, that latter 18-month period before the elections generally sees a deterioration in governance. So you're seeing these trends over a 5-year cycle.
Right. What actions do you think have been taken? I mean, with the way we've been trending, and we've just been very low and in incredible sort of results every time the index has been released, sort of gets one to ask what has been done, I suppose, to address this. And you can only do so much, can you, with TIPNG?
Yeah, look, Douglas, we have strong laws as a country, our constitution and different pieces of legislation that have been drawn up to address this issue of corruption are strong. What we do lack is implementation and enforcement of these laws. We are behind on prosecutions, which would actually make a big difference in how we are addressing this issue of corruption. People need to be held accountable for these corrupt practices that they are engaging in. We need to show that there is actual work being done to hold these people to account, and at some point that we are trying to also get back the proceeds of these crimes. There's been legislation introduced last year, changes made to the Proceeds of Crime Act, but that needs to be implemented as well.
We look at this, in fact, and we see and just measure how much work has been done, I suppose, in the rest in a way. You get a report like this, you present it to relevant authorities to follow up and do something. What's the rate like have been in its inception?
When you read the two reports, or the two reports from FATF and also from the CPI, and you look at the assessment of the FATF group, and you look at the findings from the CPI, you'll see there's a correlation. And the key word here is enforcement. Right. So the FATF grey listing comes of success. I mean, you reflect on it. I think the action against, or the charges against Mr. Tienstein was probably the most recent of recent times. Right. You've had the charges laid against Paul Paraka,
right,
which is a major case of corruption in the Department of Finance. And so Mr. Paraka is in jail, so that's a mark of some success. Recent action taken by ICAC with respect to the PNG Sports Federation funds are also encouraging, but there is much, much more. And I think the key thing we need to remember is that different parts of our judicial system, different parts of our enforcement system have been functioning, have been working, and one of them is FASU, Financial Action supervision unit within the Bank of PNG.
Yeah.
Now, at our recent conference and previously, it was stated by FASU that they've made referrals of up to 5,000 suspected transactions, suspicious transactions. So one needs to ask the questions, what is happening with this information when it goes to the police? What is happening with this information when it goes to agencies that are responsible for the next phase or the next stage of those investigations?
Mm.
That's where the spotlight needs to be placed, and we need to ask that question of the leaders of those agencies, why they're being derelict in their responsibility.
Mm. Peter Wright is the chairman of TIPNG. Also with him on the panel this morning is Ms. Ariane Kasman, the CEO of TIPNG. We, on the back of the recently released 2025 Corruption Perception Index, revealing a sharp decline in Papua New Guinea's scorecard on that. We're 26 out of 100 countries been surveyed in the current CPI report. We go for a quick commercial break. We're back in a moment.
Hi, my name is Valerie Ermont, and
Well, on the next one, FM 100 Talkback, as we break up for the weekend again, we go off with a scorecard, a report card on Papua New Guinea standing with the Corruption Perception Index. 26 out of 100 countries been surveyed over the past year, and this is where we stand. This is actually marking a significant 4-point drop from its 2024 score of 31 to 26. You might say, oh, what? 31 to 26. That's an improvement, isn't it? Well, improvement perhaps in the numbers, but in the standing, it's just as corrupt as it has been over the years. Give me an understanding on this, Ariane, when we come to the way it's been ranked. 0 being highly corrupt and 100 being very clean. Yes?
Yes, correct.
Expand a bit more on this so we understand. So from 2024, 4-point drop to where we are now. 2024 score was 31.
Yes, 31.
1 year later, we're 26. Yes?
Yes.
Tell me a bit more on this. I mean, what does this mean, really?
The Corruption Perceptions Index is a measure of the perceived level of public sector corruption in a country, and there's over 180 countries that have been held against the same measure. So we're seeing the results really for right around the globe. And what, unfortunately for Papua New Guinea, what we're seeing is that the 6 expert assessments that were used to calculate our Corruption Perceptions Index score all perceive that we are very challenged with how we are addressing corruption.
Right.
And this comes down to whether we are prosecuting those that are corrupt, Are our anti-corruption laws actually being enforced? What is bribery like in the country when it comes to doing business? And so these are some of the views that are shared, expressed through these expert assessments that are made. And then this composite index is brought together. So in order to be on the Corruption Perceptions Index, a country has to have at least 3 sources, and PNG has 6 of those sources that have been used to calculate this year's Corruption Perceptions Index score.
Yeah. When you mentioned expert assessment, there are 6 independent expert assessments and business surveys, yes? Can you expand a bit more on that?
Yes, so like all the countries around the world, there's different expert surveys that are done. So things that are done like the World Economic Forum, the Bertelsmann Institute, really looking at how we are faring as a country. And this is, assessments done with all countries, or not all, but at least most countries around the globe. And so what we are taking is really international institutions that have collected data from people doing business in Papua New Guinea or with Papua New Guinea. And this is what they are sharing as their perception of how doing business in Papua New Guinea is like.
Yeah, so just an overview, of course, Corruption Perception Index. We'll also go in the course of our discussions, perhaps, and see what it means for Papua New Guinea in its standing, both globally and in a regional sort of context in a way. Much of this, the result this time around, as we alluded to earlier, is tied with the electoral cycle. And as we prepare for the national general elections next year, what are key risks to the 2027 elections, and perhaps how can they be mitigated? If I can just throw that out for discussions here.
Well, Douglas, the TI PNG has a focus on the 2027 elections, and the reason for that is that the election, the election process itself is the fundamental pillar that upholds our democracy. It's the way, it's the mechanism that we use to select our leaders into Parliament, and as a result, give them the authority and power to be able to govern our country. So it's a significantly and seriously important process that we go through. TI focuses on trying to ensure that we protect the integrity of the election system. And so that's really where the efforts are. In its relationship to the CPI, the kind of logic that we apply is that if we're able to deliver a free and a fairer and an election that has some greater degrees of integrity, the hope is that we'll have more elected leaders that are more representative of their constituents and not being elected through corrupt means. Now, the hope there is that if we get enough of those types of leaders in Parliament, then perhaps we can swing Parliament back to a Parliament that is more representative and more focused on delivering the kind of improvements that the country needs in terms of health services, education services, and just the general environment of within the country. So that's why the elections are so important for TI.
Yeah. Do you think this level of conversation should also trickle down, cascade down to the very people in the first place who actually nominate and elect the leaders in the floor of Parliament to be empowered with such knowledge and information?
Very much so, Douglas, and that's really where TI does its work through the Community Coalition Against Corruption. And so we've had consecutive meetings over the last 3 years now, and we've put together a engagement plan for the remainder of this year, and that engagement plan will mobilise the groups such as the churches, the women's groups, the youth groups, the chambers of commerce within all the provinces. And it will allow us to be able to connect into their membership, to be able to start to disseminate this type of information into those communities. The hope is to prepare and to provide information for our people within the electorates in order for them to better understand their roles in the election process and to uphold the democratic process that should be applied.
Very good. The word integrity, and you mentioned a fair bit around the descriptions and a great sort of descriptions around it. But integrity and how integrity in institutions like the PNGEC, talk me through how
to achieve that, that individual needs to firstly be independent of external influence. That's the first starting point. To have the character, the moral fibre, to be able to stand up for what is right. The second is to be able to be competent in the roles that they take on. and to have the right type of expertise and experience in order for them to lead that organization and to be able to manage the process and the responsibilities that they've been given. So if we have that type of individual at the helm or leading these organizations, whether it be Electoral Commission, Police Force, whether it be ICAC, whether it be whatever the agency is, and if those individuals have not been appointed through a political association.
CPI report. With the way PNG stands and fares on the back of this report, could you draw the comparison, I suppose, in the region and the global sort of average in a way?
In Fiji, in Vanuatu, in Solomon Islands are at the 40, 50, 60 score mark. But we in Papua New Guinea, unfortunately, have remained between 30 and 24.
I'm getting some figures around this. The vast majority of countries are failing to keep corruption under control. More than two-thirds, mine's 122 out of 182, score under 50.
Yes. So we are seeing right across the world for Transparency International chapters as well, there is a decline. And a lot of this does mean that there has unfortunately become very limited space for civil society to be able to operate. Number two, unfortunately, we are seeing impunity on the rise. People are not being held accountable. And I think, as you know, not just for Papua New Guinea, but even in the region, there is a lot of work that needs to be done by our leaders to address corruption.
Do we have some collaborative sort of with the other Pacific Island countries, I suppose, in the region?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We work very closely together. We have a regional grouping of all the TI chapters, and so we share a lot of information across the chapters. So that supports some of our smaller nations. Papua New Guinea, as you're aware, is such such a large population, a bigger economy, and so our exposure to corruption is significantly greater.
Yeah. With the Pacific neighbors, and Ariana, you mentioned Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, neighbors like this, in fact, Solomon Islands 44 and Vanuatu 47 maintain much higher scores. But this is showing that progress is possible in the region, I suppose.
It is. It is. It's showing that progress is possible, but again, it does come down to our willingness to enforce our laws that are there, our willingness to ensure that there are prosecutions happening.
Right.
There are challenges right across the Pacific, but as Peter said, unfortunately for Papua New Guinea, it is much stronger because we have such a large population and we're dealing with a large amount of money in our national budget as well. So it comes down to things like, is our Auditor General's office able to operate? Are they able to actually look at financial reports and produce the statements, the audited statements, so that we can see where money is going, where money has been spent, and if there has been money that's been misused, who is being held to account for these reports that are coming out?
Ariane Kasman is the CEO for TIPNG. Also on the panel is Peter Reitze, Chairman of TIPNG. Our discussions on the release of the 2025 Corruption Perception Index results, of course, revealing yet Papua New Guinea standing between 31 and 26, and not a very good scorecard. If you'd like to be part of this discussion, please give us a call. We're on 323-3777. You can also text us to 77146-340. That's 77146-340. And following us on our Facebook page as well, do drop us or inbox us your queries, your pointers, and we'll share that with the panel. Go for a quick break. Be back in a moment. Talkback Friday as a break for the weekend. We go off with yet another a stark report of the CPI standing, I suppose, Papua New Guinea not faring very well again. Ivan, good morning to you. Bogi Bogi Namona, as he says Bala Bogi Bogi Namona. Ivan, thanks for joining us. Ivan's just mentioned, in fact, he says, just like to get PIPNG suggestion as to how the next elections should be conducted in terms of it being a fair election. Can they give their suggestions by not paying too much attention to funding, but by focusing more on what we have available, such as a community cooperation, churches, NGO involvement, etc.? A fair point, and Chairman, I believe you sort of alluded to that in a way as well. But Ivan, thanks for joining us. Yes.
Well, Ivan, thanks for that those pointers, because I think that's an important place for us to focus our attention. As I've mentioned, part of the work of the elections is to mobilise the community to ensure that they become very much a key component of delivering a free and fair elections. So it's by the community being aware of their responsibilities as citizens, and then empowering them with that information to be able to take active agency around the conduct of the elections.
Sure.
But equally important is the actual governance and leadership within the Electoral Commission itself. And so there's a three-tiered approach here. Community being the ones that can guarantee and safeguard the actual conduct of the elections. The agencies that are responsible, such as the Electoral Commission, and then the state agencies such as police,
Right.
and DPLGA, the Department of Provincial and Local Level Government, Department of Finance, in terms of the kind of resourcing that the elections will need. By that I mean the funding that's released to the elections. All of that together allows us to be able to better manage the elections. One of the key things that we find is the greatest risk to our elections of recent times is the prevalence of guns, the prevalence of violence in a growing number of our electorates. That for us is the biggest worry, because what it unfortunately does is it allows the elections to be captured by criminals,
Right.
who then in a way try to legitimize themselves through the election process, through a corrupted election process, and those same criminals then become elected leaders. That's what I fear the most.
There you go. You can text us to 771463440. I'm still trying to get my head around the numbers here. 771463440. You can make a call to the studio 323-3777. That's 323-3777. I see Justin joining us as well, but Justin, send us a text again. He's just got it off again, but I'd love to hear from you, your input into our discussions this morning. And we're looking at the standing in a way. All right. Okay, here we go. I'm a little bit messy in coordination this morning. Let's take this call. That's Fun FM 100 Talkback. Hello there.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Good morning to
Yeah.
the CPI chairman and CEO, and good morning to you, Demagi. I just want to put in a line about the discussion topic.
All right. Show your name, please. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Brisbane again, your friend.
Thank you so much. Picking us up on our software, really, in our app out of Brisbane. Thank you so much. Is your own name?
Thanks to the app. Yeah, I think from just a brief intro sort of from the chairman and the CEO respectively about what's gone wrong, and that is pretty much we have the laws and everything in place, but the people that are supposed to be implementing the very laws, to all people don't count the failed miserably. And I think this is something that we really need to focus on, because at the end of the day, corruption is something that affects the whole lot of us. Whether we are policemen, we are electoral commission, we are what have you. What has happened in our country is that a few minute group of people have sucked the life out of our country, and the rest of us bear the brunt of all this. And corruption is something that everybody should take it personally, because we are never going to escape every time things like this happen, we all get affected. It's not for PI only, it's not for anybody else, but every one of us need to account for this and make this change. And I think one of the things that I would like to suggest to PNG guys is, I know you do a bit of awareness around the things. I want us to at least maybe have our discussions around the people that are overseeing this election, the discipline forces, the election commission. Well, everybody, I mean, we are all stakeholders in this thing. And I see this in part of the higher. Most of these guys have councils, whatever, sort of elected into parliament. They never got elected through the normal way. And unfortunately, the oversight bodies stand and watch and do nothing. And thanks to that, we have a country, we are where we are thanks to that. A lot of these guys have never got mandated by the people. These are things that we need to take seriously. Police and army, whoever else, electoral commission, when you go to polling stations, they need to make sure that people are, as individuals are going through and voting without coercion or intimidation or whatever. And I think that is going to go a long way in helping us. Because at the end of the day, like I said, the police don't escape the outcomes of corruption. The real effect of corruption affects a whole lot of us. So we should all make it our business. And I think that is the awareness we need to highlight this a lot. Everybody, that we all have a stake in this. We all need to do the right thing. And unfortunately for the over the checks and balances, the electoral, what do you call it, the Ombudsman Commission, unfortunately, is been compromised so much that they have become pretty much sleeping dogs. At one point, they had two ombudsman people who are from the same province, speak the same language, and they were there for a long, long time. All the while corruption is happening all around here, and they have done nothing. I think with all the talk, I hope they come good, but I would like to ask CPI, to basically get it out to these people, the responsible people who have oversight over this thing, to think as we as a collective body are more powerful and we don't get affected by corruption. We are just propping up a few elite cooks at our expense. And we should all do the right thing. The laws are there, the institutions are there. We failed big time. I agree with you, Chairman. The prosecution, the investigations, these just haven't gone anywhere. And I hope this kind of awareness where we all have a stake in it, and we're propping up a few minorities. We're leaving it at our own expense, and we all have a stake in it. And so when we go to the elections, we make sure that people are doing the right thing, voting in line like we used to, not like what's happening up in the islands where they say, vote, or I don't know whatever else they say, and they do it up there. This is where we're going to start doing the right thing. Otherwise, unfortunately, I think the systems today, the people that are at the helm are compromising, and we are where we are. We can talk all we want until the cows come home. There are people that are entrusted with the responsibilities that oversee these things, and they fail us miserably. I think this is something that's a discussion that needs to be had too.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm going to, you stated quite a lot really, and quite the obvious really, but there are trends that you've actually approached in a way in your, your discussions here this morning that have already been shared by the panel. But we'll go over this again. Thank you so much for reaching out to us again. He's actually calling out of Brisbane, following us and the station, of course, on his on the app. Thank you so much, buddy. We'll go for a quick commercial break. Not sure if the panel would like to just go over what you've mentioned, but quite the obvious. Appreciate the time. Right. There you go. 323-3777. That's 323-3777. You can also text us to 77146-340. TIPNG, our guest on the show this morning, a trend we get to see on a scorecard, a pattern of slight improvement over 5 years, followed by a sharp decline during election year. So you can see a trend now. And so much of the discussions on the back of this CPI report is based around preparedness for the next general elections. We're back in a moment. And an S1 FM 100 Talkback show, of course, for Friday morning. Our number again is 323-3777. And you can WhatsApp me into the studio, 77146-340. And for those of you following us on our Facebook page as well, we've got all avenues covered for you to be part of this conversation. 26 out of 100, a significant 4-point decline from 2024 to 2025. That's the CPI report that's just been released. Justin, we'll come to you in a bit. Thanks for texting, but let me take this call first of all. Nesfan FM 100 Talkback.
Hi, Douglas, morning.
Good morning. Candid? Yeah, I recognize your voice, Candid. Thank you.
Okay, good morning to the panel.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning.
I do not know the name, so.
Yeah. All right. The panel very quickly. TI PNG Chairman, Mr. Peter Reitze, and TI PNG CEO, Arian Kaufman.
These are popular names.
Oh, yes.
I forgot.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just add on to one of my brothers who is calling from, who called from Brisbane. Okay. That's true. And you see, the anti-corruption watchdogs, they are not body. You look at the police force squad. Okay, before when Major Damuru was the head, okay, he did not give chance to those corrupt guys. But once he left the office, now we do not know who has taken over. And then we do not know whether this directorate is assisted or not, or it is de facto, because we are no longer anything from the police force squad. So this is what is happening in there. And then you look at corruption. Before the students, they were protesting against corruption. And now I don't see students even raise their voices. So we do not know what happened to those students, the university students. So they are not even properly addressing those issues. And then if you look at the Bible, when the king was corrupt, a pastor stood up and rebuked him. But now I don't see any church leaders there coming out to the middle and address those issues like corruption. The only church leaders I can see is the bishop for Lutheran Church, the Lutheran Church, Reverend, sorry, I forget his name. This Reverend Church Rami and Cardinal John Ribbert. Only two guys there working on these issues that affect us. But that is the spiritual watchdog. And then before, when I saw Ridolua, when he was chief of business, former chief of business commissioner, Ridolua and Red Corner Manor, when these guys were in power, and all gonna referring on corrupt money. But now, I don't see this commission is compromising. So thank you, PNG, for what you are doing. And if you look at some other Pacific countries, PNG still corrupt countries. Because Solomon Island scored 44 and Fiji scored 55. And PNG is 26. And this is the most corrupt country. And this is the same guys who went to overseas center. They brought the Bible to PNG and placed the Bible in the parliament and declared this country Christian. And on the other side, they are corrupting the country. And if you look at some other countries, if an MP is corrupt, they voluntarily resign. So shame on you guys. You are corrupting the country. And then you come out and preach and sugar-coated message. We are not stupid. Who is watching you? And one example, if you look at the decanter, the election fraud. Because at 5 o'clock they declared a simple. And then at 7 o'clock there's no keeper. So this is another corruption here. So there's something go wrong. Something fishy is here.
Yeah.
And people are corrupting come up so. So
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good plan. Thank you, Candid. You can actually listen to the response if the panel would like to add to your remarks off air. Thank you for the call. Okay, thank you so much. 323-3777. Also text us to 77146-340. Yeah, Candid, quite knowledgeable, and I'm amazed that ordinary citizens are keeping a track on this again, and you can probably see how people are becoming more concerned around the issue of corruption, yes?
Yes, Douglas, and I think also in his voice you can hear the frustration.
Yeah.
And as I said, my worry is that if we allow this to continue to remain as it is, by that I mean the election system continue to be dysfunctional, we are going to see more and more violence in terms of the way that the elections conducted. That's the fear that I have. And when we start to have that type of situation within our election system, it then becomes a complete breakdown of our democracy, because you will have the powerful, those that have the ability to mobilise groups to then take over the election process. I'll give you an example. If you look at the history in terms of some of the African states, that's what's led to some of the civil conflicts there, because of the different groups that control power through force and through guns. So as a result, it causes civil conflict as well. That's what I'm worried about, yes.
Okay, we're going to go for a quick time call at 10 o'clock. I'll just keep our guests or a panel here for a couple more minutes on the other side of this time call. Keep those text messages coming in, and of course your phone calls as well.
FM 100 time call. It's 10 a.m.
Three four zero. TIPNG Chairman Peter Wrightsey, and of course the CEO for TIPNG, Ms. Ariane Kasman. We're taking on your calls, your text messages. Now, okay, here's Justin, and Justin says, okay, let me just pull this out now. Okay, where are we on this? Thank you, Justin, for joining us. And it says, thanks, Dagi and Transparency International. As Papua New Guinea is currently facing the Financial Action Task Force, or FATA for short, grey listing, which highlights serious weaknesses in our financial and government systems, is seeking TIPNG your expert guidance, I suppose, in a way, on constructive and technical measures that could assist the national government in addressing this challenge. That's probably one. I'd like to greatly appreciate your advice on the following specific areas. One, strengthening enforcement and oversight. What specific technical measures and monitoring mechanisms does Transparency International recommend to ensure that PNG's government agencies, including the Internal Revenue Commission, fully comply with anti-money laundering, AML, and counter-terrorism financing, or CTF for short, those laws? Secondly, ensuring transparency in beneficial ownership. How can TIPNG assist the PNG government in implementing and enforcing a robust beneficial ownership registry for companies that entrust, ensuring transparency, public accessibility, and protection from misuse for corruption or money laundering? And there's the other, capacity building and risk-based approach. What technical support, training, and risk-based frameworks can TIPNG provide to PNG's law enforcement, regulators, and oversight bodies to improve detection, investigation, and prosecution of financial crimes in alignment with international or FATF standards? Your insights on these matters will be invaluable in helping the government make or take actionable, transparent, and internationally compliant steps to protect public resources, reduce corruption, and restore financial credibility. That is a lot, really.
It's a well-rounded response to some of the issues that the FATF recommendations have pointed to. So in terms of TI's work, we seek to engage with agencies that are responsible in this area, and we have a healthy engagement with FASU. For those that are aware, last year we ran a seminar bringing together, working with the Bank of Papua New Guinea and FASU, and bringing together some experts in the field, and then providing a series of presentations looking at issues such as the anti-money laundering if you like, the oversight of anti-money laundering acts within financial and banking institutions. And we also looked at the Proceeds of Crime and Act and how the enforcement of that could support the deterrent factor within the agencies as well. So we've worked very closely with those agencies to be able to start to build that capability. But to Justin's point, I mean, the starting point is to look at the agencies that are currently involved in the process. So the front line is FASU, because they're able to then through the monitoring of the banking and finance sector, they're able to pick up suspicious transactions that are coming through the banking and finance sector. Okay, so that's the first starting point. As it moves through the system, the suspicious transaction reports are then assessed, and then if they are a cause for further investigation, they're referred to the police, and for them to investigate further, to the IRC and to other agencies that have a responsibility around the nature of these transactions.
Mm.
The weakness at the moment is when they go to those secondary agencies, the inability of those agencies to either conduct the investigations, or perhaps the inability of those organisations to have the expertise to be able to really understand if there's corruption involved in these transactions. And if there is, to be able to then take it to the next stage, to be able to gather the evidence in order for them to then consider whether charges should be laid against these individuals. And then obviously the third component of that is the ability to then engage in the prosecution of those individuals and to see that to an end. So Justin's points are very clear and very much true. We need to look at all the parts of that process. From TI's point of view, where we lend our support is to bring, if you'd like, global practice, and to bring with us that understanding of transparent and accountable systems, so that we can strengthen these agencies in order for us to be able to improve their work in conducting those investigations and eventually prosecutions. So that's how we look to work together. We've got a standing arrangement with FASU where we look to try and create awareness within the banking and finance sector. And of recent times, we now opened up to the designated non-financial actors. So these are your accountants, your lawyers, your real estate agents, your motor vehicle dealers. And the reason those groups are so important is because people use those transactions as a source of moving money, corrupted money. So you buy a house with corrupted money, you then sell that house, you then repatriate that money, or you give it to a third party, and that eventually goes down this laundering trail. That's why they call it money laundering.
Right.
And at some point, it appears in a bank account somewhere, supposedly clean. So that's why it's important that we go through all those parts, all those stakeholders involved in this process, and try and get greater transparency of that transaction, in order for us to ensure that we're able to pick up if there's anything that's suspicious.
Arena, did you want to come on that too?
Yeah, I just wanted to also speak to some of the points that our friend from Brisbane called in and spoke about. And I mean, he's right. There is a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to the disciplined forces. Yesterday, we heard from the acting electoral commissioner during the parliamentary committee hearing on the state of preparations for 2027, say that there will be actual information and awareness sessions, actual training done with disciplined forces to prepare them for 2027 elections. And I think that was a very promising priority to hear, in that there are a lot of new recruits coming through in the law enforcement agency. So it will be good to have that level of awareness and training done with our disciplined forces. On the back of that, also looking at our agencies, if you go to a department or agency and ask them what's your biggest challenge, they will say corruption. And when you ask them what do you have in place to address that issue, they don't have policies or a framework that can help them to address corruption issues within their department or agency. And so one of the things that TIPNG has been working on is working one-on-one with agencies and departments to develop internal anti-corruption strategies or policies that can help that department address issues internally, and try to make sure that they are actively investigating any issues of corruption that come up within the agency and be able to refer to the appropriate agencies. So we need to also be empowering public servants to be able to come forward and say, I'm experiencing this issue, or I flagged this issue of corruption. It needs to be investigated. And we also need to make sure that the whistleblower protections are
Right.
strong and are in place to protect people that do want to report corruption. ICAC is there, the fraud squad is there, and of course we take the points that there is still a lot of work to be done, but reporting corruption is the first step to trying to make sure that we are addressing issues of corruption in this country.
Yeah, there you go. We having our discussions on the back of the recently released 2025 Corruption Perception Index, CPI, Papua New Guinea making a significant 4-point drop from its 2024 score of 31 to now 26. We're taking your calls as well, 323-3777. You can also text us to 77146-340 and inbox us if you're following us on our Facebook page. A quick commercial break, be back in a moment. Okay. Right, the numbers are 323-3777 and 77146-340. The chairman of TIPNG, Peter Wrightsey, and the CEO, Erin Kasman, are both here in the studio taking your calls, your text messages, and your queries. Ivan, thanks for dropping us another line. Ivan says, Doug, just want to add on the work the chairman, Peter Wrightsey, and the CEO, Ms. Kasman, and the team are doing in TIPNG. They really are a well-oiled machine and continue to be out there doing their duties with much passion and integrity. Keep up the great work. Many thanks. There you go. You got a good report card there from Ivan. Thank you, Ivan. Absolutely. Thanks for that. Justin, I know you were typing something. If you can quickly send it to us in a jiffy, we'll get it discussed as we slowly wrap up our discussions. But just going over this again, and in light of our standing, of course, with FATF and the grey listing, what specific actions can the government take to address the decline in PNG's CPS score? I know you alluded to that, strengthening institutions and so forth, but yes.
Well, look, Douglas, I think the first step the government needs to take is to really acknowledge the significant seriousness of this situation. The grey listing will have significant impact on business in terms of the banking and finance arrangements. So it'll have a direct impact on business in terms of the way they conduct their activities. Just in terms of the ordinary, the ordinary citizen, think about it in terms of this: that investments coming into our country will essentially cost a lot more because there'll be further devaluation of the kina.
Right.
That has an impact in terms of the food and staples that are imported. So in terms of the cost of living, there'll be pressures on our cost of living, which people are already struggling. So that's just an immediate impact in terms of the impact of the grey listing. The relationship with corruption is that the grey listing will not be lifted unless we deal with corruption. unless we seriously deal with corruption. So we've all said this over the years, it's a wake-up call, but it needs to go beyond the wake-up call now.
Yeah.
The real, sorry.
Yeah, and Chairman, you also, and I like your thinking behind when I mentioned just casually in a way that we need to be seen to be doing something progressively in updating FATF, I suppose, this international body that sanctions such countries as us now in the grey list, by ticking the boxes. And you said, yes, just as much as we tick the boxes, we need to be actioning them too, yes?
Yes, correct. We need to demonstrate that we've taken the action required, and that really requires a firm commitment from our leaders. Again, I point to the fact that many of our government agencies are politicized. So if we're serious about changing our country, we should look seriously about the kind of people that are appointed to these important positions. There's references made to the Ombudsman Commission by your callers. This is what I'm talking about in terms of politicizing our state institutions. So if we're serious, that's the starting point. We need to ensure that the boards of these organizations are independent, and that we have capable people sitting on these organizations. We remove any kind of political involvement or influence out of these organizations, and we have them function as they should to uphold their constitutional responsibilities. And the only measure of whether a person is performing or not is the outcome of their actions. How many prosecutions have they done?
Right.
How many investigations have they led? How many issues have been brought to public reports? And so this is really where we should measure a effectiveness of an institution, not around how many times they carry a Prime Minister's briefcase or a ministerial briefcase. It's about the number of convictions, the number of prosecutions that such agencies deliver in terms of the interest of the public. And that's really where we need to start.
Yeah. And your point around having the right people in the right places, really, and relating this, I suppose, to the election cycle. That's where people change, heads of department change, I suppose, in a way. And so that's why it's important to strengthen these institutions in lead up to the elections. Now, let's typically take this call first of all. That's fine. FM 100 talkback. I've just lost that. If you're calling, please do make that call again. 323-3777. That's 323-3777. And you can text me to 77146-340. That's 77146-340. Now we're slowly wrapping up our discussions, but just as we do, Justin again has dropped in another line here. All right. And February 2026, Papua New Guinea was officially included on the financial. Okay, I think we've read it, haven't we? All right. He's dropped in another line. If we can we'll just scroll down a bit more and see where he's come up with, in a way. Thank you, Justin, for calling, for texting us yet again, right down to the bottom. There you go. And I think this is where we are. FATF, why PNG listed, and can I just go up that way again? Why PNG was listed. FATF found weaknesses in PNG's financial regulatory system, such as gaps in monitoring suspicious transactions, enforcing anti-money laundering laws, or preventing terrorist financing. Implications of being on the grey list, for information where Justin comes from, it signals risks to international investors and banks, which may be more cautious in doing business with PNG. It can affect foreign aid, investment, and the cost of international transactions. And it also pressures the government to implement reforms quickly to strengthen its financial and regulatory systems. Next steps for PNG, I suppose, in light of all of this, PNG will need to implement FATF's recommended reforms, such as improving laws, enforcement, and reporting systems. Once FATF sees sufficient progress, PNG can be removed from the grey list. And very quickly, in short, it's a warning from the global financial community that PNG's financial system is vulnerable to abuse, and reforms are urgently needed to regain international confidence. From him personally, he says he'd like to attend any programs or capacity building regarding such matters conducted by Transparency International, as he's very interested. All in all, supporting Transparency International for their tremendous work and approaches. Thank you, Justin. There you go. Um,
Well,
what
I
can
think,
you say?
can't say any more. And Justin, you're most welcome. And I suppose on that note, I just encourage your listeners, those that feel passionate about the fight against corruption, do reach out. TI is on the social media platforms. It's on the website. And if you get in touch with FM100 as well, the first step to take is to become a member of TI.
Right.
Okay, so grab an application, complete the application, and that'll go through a vetting process just to make sure we know who the individual is, and we know that they carry the values of TI. That's most important. And once you're through that, then you then can become a member of TI and support the work of TI.
I just yes,
I can
yes, Arian.
one of Justin's points he raised was around beneficial ownership, and there has been work that started last year by the IPA to look at beneficial ownership. We have gone through draft legislation already. There has been consultations, and we've been involved in that process as well. So there is action being taken by IPA to ensure that the beneficial ownership register can be done quickly for PNG, in fact, this year, and to make sure that information about who actually owns these companies is made available. Right now, through the consultations, IPA are looking at making sure that this information is open to the public and accessible for the public. And so we would be encouraging people, when you see these opportunities for the consultations coming up, regional consultations coming up, please do engage. As Peter mentioned, members of TIPNG, we do ensure that we are getting the word out to ensure that you are getting your word in. I think as citizens, the most important thing we can do is contribute to draft legislation, draft policy that's coming through. Make sure your voice is heard in these pieces of legislation. What we need is well-informed legislation being passed in Parliament.
Right. Absolutely. Just as we wrap up again, just very quickly, while we look at institutions being strengthened in light of preparedness for the 2027 elections, how can citizens support TIPNG's efforts to promote electoral integrity? Now, you can be part of that, of course. Yes?
Certainly, Douglas. I mean, they can join as the first step. But also reach out. As I made reference to our community coalition against corruption.
Right.
And so what we will do is we'll publicise a little more around the organisations that fall under the umbrella of the CCAC.
Right.
And I would say that most citizens would be able to access those groups. We're talking about the mainstream churches. Okay, so we're talking about the various chambers of commerce, and we're talking about a significant number of women's groups and youth groups. And the trade union congress as well. So, these are the groups that make up the CCAC. And so, for people that are in the provinces or at the district level, this can be the mechanism that they can join to be able to have their voice and to have their issues elevated up to the national level. Right. So that's the opportunity there.
Right there. Okay, and likewise, of course, with citizens and supporting TIPNG's efforts, the role, I suppose, law enforcement agencies can have or to play in addressing election-related corruption in a way.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that'll be a big one, and I think the statements made by that Ariane referred to from our Defence Force is encouraging. We need to do a lot of work with the police in preparation for the elections. And some of that we can do through TI's role on the IDAC, or the the Inter-Department Electoral Committee, that's chaired by the Chief Secretary.
Right.
So as that group starts to mobilise its activities more, that's where TI will advocate through that entity for the police to improve the way that they oversee the elections. So they engage with the elections.
Yeah. While we're there with the heads of government agencies, I suppose, in a way, I take a leaf of what Mr. Elu, in remarks to our standing, 26 out of 100, he said, Thomas Elu describes this as deeply concerning. Right? And he made the remarks during the heads of government agency meeting at APEC House during the course of this week. Addressing senior public servants, he said the ranking should serve as a serious wake-up call, urging agency heads to strengthen integrity systems within the departments to better detect, prevent, and address corruption. Exactly what TIPNG is calling out for as well, challenging leaders to reflect on whether they are doing enough to deliver their mandates, I suppose, in a way. But just as we let you go again very quickly, can I just seek an idea and a thought around what TIPNG's priorities for electoral reforms can be this year as a stepping stone for the actual elections next year?
Sure. Well, Douglas, we've been advocating this for a while now, and knowing that we've only got really 12 months to go before the election starts, or the election process starts. So we've kept it fairly basic, and that is to ensure that firstly we try and support governance within the Electoral Commission itself. And so this is our call is to have the Electoral Commissioner appointed early in the piece.
Right.
So whoever that individual is, to have that person appointed early in the piece, to then establish the electoral advisory group, and to have those individuals in place, so that they can provide guidance and sounding for the Electoral Commissioner. And then within the Electoral Commission itself, we've called for, through the parliamentary submission and also in our public statements, for a commission structure to be established within the work of the Electoral Commission itself. So not just the Electoral Commissioner, but deputy commissioners, so that there's a shared responsibility there, but also a check and balance, so that there's not just one person making decisions, but there's a bit more of a rigour to the way that the Electoral Commission makes its decisions. The second component is an early release of the funding and the budget support for the elections itself. The earlier the Electoral Commission receives that, the better they can prepare.
Right.
So that's the second. The third is around publishing the electoral roll.
Right.
In whatever form it is at the moment, in whatever inaccuracies are at the moment, but have it publicly available so that our citizens can look at themselves on that roll and understand whether they're on that roll or not, and then support it with a mechanism that will allow them to be able to register on that roll. So by the time we get to the elections, there is only one roll, and we all know what it comprises.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. I mean, and we know, of course, just as a stepping stone, I suppose, for the 2027 election, yesterday, in fact, the Special Parliamentary Committee on the 22 elections, looking at what happened, what needs to be done in preparation for 2027, has set. And obviously, they'll get the directions as to how they're going to address issues leading up to the elections. But let me thank you both again for coming along, Mr. Peter Reitze, TIPNG Chairman, and Ms. Ariane Kaufman, CEO of TIP. Nice to have you all. Thank you so much for some of the first guests for the 2026 season of the Nest on FM 100 Talkback Show. I'd like to wish you all the best and a great weekend.
Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you.